Welcome to Straight Outta Savannah. Today's guest isn't someone who works with mindset, though people often try to put him in that box. He is a mentor, speaker, and founder devoted to helping high capacity women build the internal stability required to hold the life and business they say they want. The women he supports is already brilliant, capable, self aware, and deeply attuned to what they should be doing. But when pressure hits, their inner world starts to shift. Overthinking creeps in. Procrastination shows up. They hesitate in the moments that matter. They avoid the conversations that would change everything. Their consistency wavers, and sometimes, right after building momentum, they shut down completely. From the outside, they look fine. Internally, everything feels heavier than it should. His work helps them slow down enough to see the deeper patterns underneath all of it, the quiet internal dynamics shaping how they move, why they keep abandoning themselves, why pressure alters their behavior, why they know what to do but struggle to fully follow through. And from there, he guides them into rebuilding more stability, more self trust, more honesty with themselves, more consistency that doesn't collapse under pressure, more capacity to hold a bigger life without crumbling every time things get hard. Because eventually, the way a woman leads her inner life becomes the way she leads everything else. So, welcome, Braylin Paulino.
Hello, hello. Yeah, so my name is Braylin, and I have a really love-hate relationship with positivity and positive thinking. Because for so long we're always told, think positive, just be positive. And if that were the solution, we would all be where we want to be, right? We would all be in the place that we want to go. But what I've learned is that we have to get past just thinking positively. We have to go to actually at the nervous system level, changing who we are, changing what we value, changing what our attention is focused on. Because I feel like a lot of us, while we can try to think positively, there's still an internal world that needs to be addressed. And if that's not addressed, we're not ever going to get to that positivity that we want. And a lot of people tell us, if you're positive, you're going to attract more positivity. And while I agree with some of that, it's not just about thinking positive. It's about being a person who can attract the things that are called, towards us.
It's toxic positivity, is what it is.
Oh, oh yeah.
You're so right. I the same. Like, what? I am the most positive person that you will meet,
Hmm.
but I had some shit that went down too that wasn't good. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? I had things
Yeah.
in my life that, I wish went a different kind of way. You
Yeah.
know, and I mean, I continue to stay positive, but I think that there's more. And just like you said, it's like you want to go deeper. And I
Hmm.
don't know about you, but I was raised in the church. And so, that to me is the most toxic positivity, in a lot of cases, because it's like, um, you 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 have mentally ill people that they tell them to go pray about it, things like that. And it's like, no, they need more, they need some help. They need help. They don't, that's
Yeah.
not, they need help. It's
Hmm.
like, no, 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 no.
Yeah. And we talked a little bit about this before we started recording, right? But when I was a teacher, that was the one thing they would tell us, like, be positive, just think positively. You're being so negative. And
Hmm.
it's like, I'm not being negative. I'm just being direct about what's broken. I was not raised in the church. I was raised Catholic, but not in the church. And I became a Christian eventually. And so I was and am a person who is filled with faith. Like I am unbreakable, like I am just a person who sees that everything is working out for my good. I see that. And so to hear just be positive when things are broken. Just be positive when I'm so extremely burnt out. Just be positive when you are taking advantage of me. Like that's what I think built that toxic relationship with toxic positivity, because for so long they thought that just thinking positive was enough, but they
Right.
only said that to excuse themselves from the responsibility that they had in causing it. And so now, like, I don't agree with telling people just think positive. And that's why I don't really like the whole mindset kind of coach thing, because it's so much deeper than mindset. Because if I were focused on mindset, I would be a billionaire right now, you know? But that's not the case. There are patterns, there are programmings that have been ingrained in us, our whole lives, and situations we were in, and the environments we were in, the relationships we had. And so that requires us to break down those programmings.
Right.
But most people don't see it. Like for example, I just told you I wasn't aware of it. You said that could have been lawsuit. It could have been. Was I aware of it? Not really. I wasn't aware of the things that I did and that I was doing to stay in this environment that no longer served me. Right. Looking back, I wanted the money. I needed it. I needed the comfort. I needed the comfortability that I got from what I was doing. And so I stayed in an environment that was no longer good for me. But now that I see those patterns, I don't allow myself to stay in those environments anymore. I see it right away because I address the pattern. And it's sad that there are so many people who don't see these patterns that are running their lives. And so
Yeah,
for me, it's more about getting to the pattern and addressing the pattern, not just about think positively, because it's incomplete on its own.
it is. And see, when I heard that, I heard that it's the validation that people seek.
Yeah.
It's the validation that people seek. And so if you're seeking outside validation, of course you're going to run into all kinds of crap because you should never seek outer validation. It should always be inner. And people, we've accepted this because we've been conditioned. If you think about it, you got people that, okay, like, let me give this example. So my father did not want to go on a cruise because when he was a child, he almost drowned. Now that sounds to me, when I heard it, it sounded ridiculous. I think I laughed because I was like, well, he was a child and you're not going to be in the ocean when you're on the cruise. You know what I mean? I mean, you just don't get in the pool or the hot tub or whatever. But the other part of that is my father is like 6'3". So I'm like, okay. So anyway, so finally, my mother threatened him that she was going to go on a cruise without him. And then he was able to go on the cruise.
That's the motivation he needed.
That was the motivation that he needed. And so, but it was so crazy because when I first heard that, I was like, what kind of crap is that? That doesn't even make any sense.
Yeah. Yeah, it
For
makes
him,
no
it was a
sense.
big thing. And it was, I'm like, okay. And then he would say stuff like, I just can't swallow that much water.
So
But
don't.
think about it, that's how people think, in other situations, the same way.
Mhm.
Oh, I already went down that street and, I don't think it went anywhere. So I'm not going to try it again, even though that was 30 years ago. 10 years ago, 5 years ago, that was a long time ago. And we all know how fast things can change,
Mhm.
you
Yeah.
know.
And that's where I love to kind of jump into. Like that's my language, right? Of a lot of us, we've been conditioned sometimes because of our own decisions and our own thought patterns.
Yes.
And the interesting part is that a lot of it becomes subconscious eventually.
Yeah.
Once you reinforce something over and over and over again, the brain wants to save and conserve energy. So it's just going to make these patterns automatic. Just like, for example, why we're breathing without thinking about it, why we do some things without thinking about it, our brain made certain processes automatic, subconscious. Same thing happened with some of our patterns. If every time we try something and it's hard, and then we kind of back away and then we fail, we're going to start thinking, okay, if I put in effort, I'm going to fail, right?
Right. Right.
And and then at some point, subconsciously, when an opportunity pops up, we don't even see it, or there's like this resistance in us that's like, oh, this isn't for me. But no, it might be for you. You're just automatically already scared of it. You're automatically already pulling back. And I see that so often now where you have women who are so passionate about what they do, but the moment that something gets difficult, they shut down. They start to find a different solution. They start to go in different directions because what's they're doing right now is not working the way they want them to. But it's if you just stayed consistent with it enough or
Yes.
stay with long enough, then you're gonna see it actually start working for you. But most of them don't because of that conditioning. And so then they start something else. They start something else. Guess what happens? It's hard at the beginning because it's something new. And then they go to something else. Okay, this is hard. And the pattern just keeps going over and over and over again. And they never actually break through it because they keep restarting, but it's about actually sticking with something long enough for you to become the person who can hold it, for you to become the person who can actually manage it. And the
Mm.
more you do that, the more you see that a lot of what you found hard before was just because you weren't the person ready for it yet. And that's the opportunity to actually become that person. But if you avoid every single hard moment, you're never going to become the person. And so you're going to keep going in this cycle of like being frustrated because you're never growing, you're never changing. So you're going to always get back to the same moment over and over and over again.
See, if I was in church, I'd be shouting right now and I'd be throwing you some money because that was a word. I mean, and it's so true. And it's I can't tell you how many women I've had that same conversation with, and it's like, oh my God, no. And then I can say in my own life, I have been that as well. But I decided one day, I don't know, I said, you know what? I'm just going to ride this horse. I'm going to be consistent with this. I'm going to refine it as I go because I've been doing this show about, I don't even know, 7 or 8 years, I think.
Um,
But I've noticed the quality has gotten better over the years because I'm just consistent with it. You know what I mean? My audience hasn't grown like I want it to grow, but it's coming. I just believe it. Because I enjoy doing it and I enjoy, having these conversations and being
mhm.
able to talk. Now, one question I have for you is, you work with women
Yeah.
primarily. What made you decide to work with women instead of working with men?
So that's a question I get literally all the time. So, so when I jumped into business and I was showing up, putting in my content out there, posting videos and stuff, it was the women who I kept attracting. Like I would look at my insights, and for some reason, women just interacted with me a lot more. And when I would hop on calls, the energy was just always a lot more aligned. And so for me, I decided instead of like working against it, I'm just gonna lean into that.
Yeah,
That was the surface level answer. The more that I think about it, growing up, I didn't have the most secure relationships with the men in my life. There was just like a lot in the environment that made me feel unsafe. And so growing up, I always found comfort in like relationships with women. It felt more comfortable for me. It felt safer, especially as a boy who was taught like emotions should be bottled up and all these things. I can
right.
think back to, it was the women who taught me otherwise. It was the women who taught me to share my feelings, to talk about my feelings, to talk in general.
Yeah,
Like I remember one of my ex-girlfriends, she would like make me go on walks with her and we just talked the whole time, which is something I was not used to. And so I realized like this is different than when I was raised doing. And yeah, but just from my childhood, I was always safer with women. And I think that that was a pattern that was also reinforced growing up, where it was like I always navigated more towards relationship with women. So some of my bestest friends are women, and they've always been women, which is very interesting. And yes, I do have some best guy friends that I love to death. They're my brothers, but I just have always found my relationship with women to be a lot deeper. And I think it's because of like that space to really share my heart, share what I'm feeling, share what I'm thinking. Um, and then energetically, that's just always been one of the things that has always been there.
You are
And
in
yeah, so
touch, you are in touch with your divine feminine.
I maybe I did notice that when I would be in calls, it always felt like I was like the son they never had, you know? And so for me, energetically, I was like, you know what, like this feels like where I'm most impactful. I did work with men before, and the men that really took what I shared to heart and really like used it were men who were also more in touch with like that feminine side, with their emotions, with actually creating space for other people and not this like hustle bro, tough macho culture, which is what I was raised on. And the guys who were not like that, I just never really vibed with because I thought back to my upbringing where it was like I didn't like that version of myself where emotions were not a thing, where I was just like tough and fighting and all these things. And I have now appreciated this version of me now where it's like I am in touch with my emotions. I am actually creating space for people so that they can also feel safe.
Yeah.
And I'm doing the work myself. You know, like I'm like so committed to like the growth because I know that everything I say, everything I do has an impact on other people. And if I am going to work with women, that's a responsibility that I have to. It's an honor, and so I can't abuse that. And so for me, it's I'm gonna make sure that I am the best possible mentor, the best possible person for the people that I work with. And so I do a lot of work, a lot of inner work. Like you said, you know, seeing those patterns in that programming, there's still some things that pop up here and there. And my immediate reaction is interesting. Let me look at that. Let me dive into that. Why am I reacting this way? What is this trying to teach me? And more often than not, it goes back to the previous programming. And it's like, I need to address this now because it's, you know, holding me back or it's not allowing me to show up the way that I need to.
Yes.
And that requires a lot of honesty, a lot of truth, a lot of humility because some stuff you want to hold on to and some stuff you've been taught to hold on to. For example, I always had this idea that I needed to be tough in every situation and that I needed to be dominant. That's not how it needs to be. You know, like I don't need to do that. And it doesn't benefit me in the way that I thought it was. What's actually more beneficial to me, quote unquote, is creating space for people and giving them the space that they need to flourish and to become the person that they need to be. And I can't do that if I'm dominating. I can only do that if I'm actually listening. I'm actually giving them the space. And what's interesting is that I feel like I see that a lot in the conversations that I have with women, especially. It's like they feel safer to talk to me and to be themselves. And
Yeah.
to me, that's a good sign that I am in the place that I need to be. Um, yeah, sorry for the very long answer, but
No, that's absolutely perfect. I mean, because that's what it is. I mean, actually, because when we connected, I felt that about you. And I was like, and I had to go look at your page. I was, is he young? I said, but he's speaking with so much wisdom and the divine feminine is you definitely are in touch. And I've seen what that looks like, in men. And for me, I think it's divine because that needs to be. You should never bottle your feelings and all that kind of stuff that they try to condition you guys to do. I mean, that's just crazy. You know,
it's absurd.
thinking it probably causes damn mental illness if you think about it. You
I
know,
can
you got
I
all
can
that
talk
stuff
about that
bottled up
forever.
inside of you, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. So you work with women who look strong on the outside, but feel unstable on the inside. In your view, where does spiritual authority actually begin for a woman who's spent years overriding her own inner signals?
Ooh, I love that question. I'm going to answer this question with what you just said about how crazy it is for us to do certain things. Um, on the men's side, we were taught bottle your feelings, don't share your feelings, and they would use very interesting words to name us for sharing our feelings.
That's
Uh,
right.
and so for me, when I learned to like share my feelings in a productive way, which is a whole other conversation, I felt like a release in my body and my soul, right? It didn't feel as heavy anymore. And that for me was a sign that I was never meant to carry some of these conditionings. And because I carried those conditionings, I was never fully myself. I was never able to impact people the way that I was meant to. I was never able to be in rooms or have opportunities that I was meant to have because I was not that person because of all the weight on my soul. For women, you have your own conditionings, right? You've been taught certain things. Like, for example, one of the ones I keep hearing is that you've been taught that you put yourself aside to care for other people,
Yep.
even at your own expense. And
Yes.
so a lot of women have put themselves aside, which means they have also put their own authority aside as well.
Yes.
They've been taught to be like in the background, to be behind the scenes, that they
Yes.
can't be direct, they can't be, assertive, or else that's going to be, there's a whole nother name for that. And so a lot of women were conditioned to do that. And so because of that, they have hid their authority, they have put it aside. And so that's why one of the patterns that shows up is whenever they are going to step into a room where they could be this authoritative person, where they could be this assertive person, they kind of pull back because it's like they've been reinforcing the opposite their whole life. And so that authority is going to actually begin with a decision that they are just as valuable, just as capable, just as worth it and talented, and that they could do amazing things, right? But they have to first believe that what they've been taught is broken, that they don't have to put their own needs aside, right? There is a world where they can care for other people and still have those responsibilities while at the same time still having the openness and the space to be who they want to be, to have the lives that they want. Because if you look on the other side of that, very little men are forced to do that, very little, very like just not as often. And so for men, it's very easy to, like, yes, men have their own responsibilities. Yes, blah, blah, blah. We have our own conditionings, but
Right.
it's not to the same extent to where women are literally like, I mean, for generations, women were forced to stay home and to do these things, right? And so now that we are in a different space where women are like have the space and the freedom to build, a lot of them still have to break down those generational patterns that have been engraved in them. And so I think it begins with just like the decision that, I'm no longer gonna put my own needs aside. I'm no longer gonna put myself aside. And I'm actually gonna step into this identity. And that doesn't mean that I'm, failing my family or that I'm failing other people. It just means like I'm finally gonna choose myself. And that's not selfish. That's what we're called to do.
Yeah.
Like we're called to be ingrained and like integrated. We're called to be fully ourselves, because if we're not fully ourselves, then we're living a lie. And so I feel like life is about us removing the blocks that have kept us from being ourselves. And the
Yeah.
more we remove those blocks, the more we remove those patterns, the more we step into that version of ourselves. And that's a lifelong journey. It doesn't just happen right away. It
Sure,
doesn't just
it does. You can do that in a 3-day workshop.
or so we've been told, right? And and so it's been, interesting to see that even in my own life. Like I'm 30 years old, right? And I have taken strides. Like just in the last year alone, I've grown so much, and I still see that there's a lot more to grow. Like there's just so much. And what I've told people is pick one major thing to really dive into And until you are comfortable and you know that you're set in that, don't move on. And for me, one of those things was being grounded. And that means so many things. So for me, I had to work on my anger. I had to work on my need for validation, on my need to be seen, on my need to be respected and heard and all those things. And the more that I've done that, I've changed as a person like drastically just from knocking down those pillars. And so it's just, we need to focus on one thing at a time. And the more we do that, again, the more you step into who you're called to be. But trying to handle everything at once just does not happen. You get overwhelmed. There's that mental overload, and you
And you
kind of just stay
stop.
stuck. You get used to, yeah, you stop and you pull back because that's a pattern too. That's what, the brain cannot handle too much information at once, anyways. So if you're trying to change,
Especially not these days.
especially not these days. So if you're trying to change so many things at the same time,
Right.
that's overwhelming. And it takes a lot of effort. Like working on your anger and your patience and your need for validation at the same time,
No.
that's heavy.
That's a no.
That's a no. And so for me, when I decided like I'm gonna be a more grounded leader, I literally like had to dive into that. And the more that I've done that, it's been interesting to see the change. If I were to look back even just at the last 3 months, it's a lot of change that happens when you just dive into one thing, especially at the identity level.
Who is someone that you embodied, that embodied those qualities that you were looking for?
For me, honestly, it was Jesus. Um, the way that I see the Bible, it's instructions on how to become the best version of yourself, how to
Yeah,
become the most aligned version of yourself.
yeah.
So there is a there is an underlying need and an underlying pattern in every single one of our decisions, right? 95% of our lives are subconscious, 95%. So that means that 95% of our lives are also ran on these patterns and these programmings. And so the more that I've dove into the Bible, I started to see, okay, why is this like, why am I being told to do this or to, you know, think this way? And the more that I looked at why I wasn't was because of some underlying need,
Mm.
you know, like why was I chasing women growing up? Right? Yes, I was a kid, but it was because I needed that validation, right? I needed that safety that I wasn't getting, you
Mm.
know? And so for me it was about Jesus, like, okay, what does it actually mean? Like what does he, show up, as every day? So for example, he did have anger, but it was more of like a righteous anger for the right things. When I was angry because I felt disrespected. I felt like people were not hearing me. I felt, like people were just not seeing me. That's not the right reasons to be angry,
So there's
because
the validation right there.
there's a validation.
That's it.
Um, and so when I released the need for that, it was crazy. My anger, like, it didn't start like impacting me the same way because before I would feel it in my soul, like my body would react before I would. But now, if someone is being disrespectful, which there have been some disrespectful people this weekend, I don't feel it in my body anymore. Like I literally just feel like interesting. Like this person is saying this. I don't feel anything. I'm just gonna move on. I'm not gonna entertain this. And that's, a lot of that has come from having like a great model of like who Jesus was.
Yeah.
And a lot of people see him just like as this religious figure and blah blah blah. But it's like if you really pay attention to the man that he was and the teachings, and you see it as like a blueprint for how we could be, then we become somebody completely more powerful. Because
Yeah.
again, there's a reason for why we don't want to let go of certain things. There's 100% a reason, and we can try to put a bow on it. We can try to, we can try to say it perfectly and whatever, but there's a reason, and we can keep ignoring it. We can keep sugarcoating it, but no, there is a reason for why we hold on to certain things, certain patterns. Like there's, for example, an example of um there's like this misconception of like drinking and drinking alcohol, right? Bible never says not to drink, right? It says not to be drunk,
Right.
right? for me, I used to get really drunk.
Right.
And what was the reason for that? Right? It wasn't because I just wanted the freedom and to have fun. I was trying to escape. I was burnt out and miserable, and I was trying to escape. There's no need for me to get blackout drunk, for example.
Right.
And I would do that. Um, but now, even when I drink, I can't even drink that much anymore because of how it feels in my body. So why would I want to feel that in my body? Like, and then there's now this also impacts the next day. If I feel gross the next day, I can't show up the way that I need to for the vision and yada yada. So there's just like l- conversations we can have about every aspect of that. We can talk forever, but what I've learned is that there is a reason. And when you get to the root of the reason, without BSing yourself, without trying to sugarcoat it, if you just get to the real truth, like this is why I want to do this, you're going to see that there's some pattern there that's been holding you back. Right. And if you're honest with that, it gives you the space to actually step into something new, into something completely different.
Mm.
Uh, but it begins with that honesty.
Mm. Whew, you are so right. We could talk about, we probably could go another hour, but we are going to land this plane. So I have one question that I ask
Mhm.
all of my guests. And that question is, if there was anything in the world that you could change, what would that be and why?
The number one thing that comes to me is people living on autopilot and living asleep. Um, there's a woo-woo kind of sense to that people hear that and they're like, when they're told you're asleep, they automatically think
Woke.
woo woo woke, blah blah blah.
Hmm.
But what I truly mean by that is that there's so many of us who have lived our lives literally on autopilot, unconscious, like we're just kind of going through the motions.
Right.
And there's a beauty that comes from finally becoming aware enough to see your own patterns, to see how the life that you're living is because of your patterns and your decisions and your thought pattern, like all those things is because of you. And when you become aware of that and you become aware of the things that are actually holding you back, you have power now to actually address them. And for me, I lived most of my life that way. I would say it was in the last 2 years barely that I finally decided like I'm gonna dive in to these things, right? And I took that even deeper just in the last 6 months, and I've been able to literally drastically change myself and my life. And so I would change that just people living unaware, unconscious, asleep, and I would want them to be truly aware, not just like this generic awareness that we've been told, but just like truly aware of how
Yeah.
you're operating every single day. Because when we do that, this is my why. When we do that, we are actually able to partner with God to create the lives that we have in our hearts, to create and build the businesses that are going to impact people in the way that we envision. But it first began with us actually being awake and aware of these patterns that have been running our lives the whole life that we've been living and the whole time.
Hmm. That's so powerful. That is so powerful. Um, I don't think I've had that answer.
Awesome.
I always have to think about it, I say, and I think I've probably had over 300 interviews, and I
Well,
don't think I've had, I've only had maybe one or two people say the same thing, and some of them were just kind of similar. But I think that's important as well because I feel like, if we could just wake up, and if we and if we could just wake up and realize, our power, the power that we possess, and stop um, giving it away,
amen to that.
because that is the thing. So share, Braylin, um, any closing thoughts and where people can connect with you, the best place.
Awesome. I would say my closing thoughts would be you do have the power, like you just said, Tammy. Um, I think that a lot of people do give it away. and they don't give it away on purpose most of the time. A lot of time is subconscious. A lot of the time is through the decisions that we make from that unconsciousness, from that unawareness that lead us to a place where we are giving our power. And you can think about your life right now, and I bet you can find an area in your life where you're giving away your power.
Mm.
Your job is take your power back. But that only begins with that awareness, like I said earlier. If you are needing to have a conversation with me, you can find me on Facebook, Brailin Paulino, BraillinPaulino. My website is theauthenticcode.co. Yeah, and if you have any questions, you would like to have a conversation, hop on a coffee chat, anything like that, I'm definitely here for that, and I would love to get to know you.
Thank you so much, Braylon, for being here. Thank you for joining me today. Thank you for this wonderful, authentic conversation.
Thank you so much for having me. It's definitely been fun, and the conversation we even had before we started recording was also awesome. So,
I know. I keep saying I'm gonna have to go on YouTube University and learn how to splice it so I can record from beginning to end. But yeah, that's a lot.
yeah.
I just, I have to kind of operate in my zone of genius.
No, yeah, I get that.
But also share the freebie that you're providing.
So I'm actually, ooh, I just built this week. I actually put together, yeah, I call it the seven chambers, and they are the seven deadly patterns, especially in like life and business. And I'm actually right now validating it because pretty soon it will be like a paid product. But I already have some people testing it. And what it does is it takes you through the seven patterns, and it actually like teaches you like here's where this pattern usually comes from. Here's where it might have come from in your own life, and it kind of takes you through this reflection process of uncovering the pattern and then beginning to address the pattern. Because a lot of us don't know how to do that, right? Like I dealt with anger my whole life. How the heck do you even break that down? And really realizing like the source of it changed my life. And so I'm offering that as a gift for other people as well. And so if you are interested in that, just find me on Facebook. Just tell me, Tammy sent you, and that you're interested in that, and I can send you the link for that as well.
And the link also will be in the show notes.
Oh, perfect.
I'll put it, yeah, it'll be in the show notes on Substack and YouTube. And so wherever you see it and find it, you'll be able to see those. Because I try to
Perfect.
put all your links and stuff in there. That's why I asked for them.
Awesome.
But
Mhm.
yes, so I just believe that, I don't even like to say the sky is the limit. I like to say there is no limit.
Cool.
And I'm just so grateful to be able to have this conversation and you sharing your magic.
Mhm.
'Cause that's really what it is. And I'm just grateful to have been in the room because, then I can say, "Oh, I know him. Remember when?"
Yeah.
So I'm
Yeah.
thankful so much.
Yeah, thank you. It's been an honor to be one of your 300 guests. They're definitely an awesome conversation, and thank you for holding the space for me.
Yes. Yes. Yes, absolutely. I couldn't wait. I was kind of waiting because you know how it is with the scheduling thing. I had the
Mhm.
one scheduler still open and then the other one, and then people were finding me and finding the links from like old posts and stuff like that.
Mhm.
So I was like, oh God. And I was trying to get rid of that other scheduler so I could just use the one that you schedule on. And I was like, okay, all right. And then, in your mind, you have all these things going on. You're like, okay, well, the last time I did this, I got hemmed up, this happened, blah, 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 blah. So you kind of have to get rid of all that too.
True.
You said, no, you know what? No, no, that was then. This is
Mhm.
now.
True.
It's okay. Maybe they've improved, whatever, whatever. It's
Mhm.
going to be okay.
Yeah, I
You know,
love that.
yeah.
Yeah, to step into the next level, you have to let go of something.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Oh my gosh. So thank you so much for joining us on Straight Out of Savannah, where the magic happens. Make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. and download wherever you listen to this or watch it, because it is on Substack and YouTube, as well as all the other podcast listening places. So we are so grateful because this conversation needed to be had, and it was just beautiful. And the work that Braylin does is phenomenal. So enjoy your day, night, evening, whatever it is that you are listening or watching to this. And I hope your day is magical. Bye now.